Good morning and welcome to your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and this podcast has been bringing you conversations with authors, entrepreneurs, mentors, and business leaders for 18 years now. And I am truly honored to be ranked in the top 1.5% of podcasts worldwide. It's not because of me, it's because of my incredible guests. And my guest today is Kym Insana. She is the founder of AlwaysOn Digital and a multi-million-dollar digital marketing expert who made a bold pivot from corporate advertising to entrepreneurship. And in this episode, we talk about redefining ambition, building a flexible high-performance business, supporting working parents, and making smart digital growth decisions without burning out. And this conversation is for founders, executives, and working parents. That's important. Working parents who want growth that actually fits their lives. Our sponsor today is brought to you by Grit Leadership, founded by coach, speaker, and author Diana Fritz. Through executive coaching, team workshops, and organizational consulting, Diana helps leaders live out grace, resilience, influence, and trust in real everyday decisions, not just in theory, but where leadership actually happens. So if you are ready to move on from why me to what now and lead from a place of clarity and purpose, I highly encourage you to check out her book, Uniquely Imperfect and Uniquely Qualify, and learn more about working with her. Now, I have this book on my desk, and I genuinely recommend that you make it part of your entrepreneurial website. You can find your entrepreneurial library, sorry. You can find her on LinkedIn and Amazon. Those are the best places to find her. Now back to my guest. I'm going to ask Kym, what happens when ambition no longer fits the structure you're in? It happens to all of us at some point. Kym is known for the mantra that you can work hard, have career success, and still have the family life you desire. And that's a belief that shaped how she built her company. She intentionally designed AlwaysOn Digital to offer flexibility and balance, especially for working parents. And I know I've mentioned that a couple of times. And many of her team members are highly skilled mothers seeking meaningful careers with non-traditional schedules. Good morning, Kym. Welcome to your Partner in Success Radio. It's good to have you here. And because I can't seem to speak well today, you're doing all the talking.
Thank you so much for having me, Denise. No, you're doing great. I'm with you. Some days it's a struggle.
It is. It's just been one of those mornings already. So I'm glad you're here to talk about things that are so important. And before we get started, tell people a bit about you and why you do what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Kym Insana. I've been in the advertising space for over 26 years now. I'm a mom of 4 boys, everywhere from 8 through 19, so a wide range. I work with my husband. We started AlwaysOn Digital. I started it first, but he joined me shortly after. And so we've been raising our boys in Long Island. We're a big baseball family, and we try to fit all of that in with running a business and trying to provide a place for others to have a similar sense of work-life balance, if that's even a real thing, but it's balancing versus being completely balanced.
You know, I've often mentioned that I don't really believe in work-life balance because we're always working, we're always thinking, we're always living. So I don't know how you can possibly separate the two.
Yeah, it's true. And I think the only thing that I've started to do and have a practice of is shut down things at certain times. Not that I necessarily can shut down my kids fully, but when they're in school, it's a complete shutdown, obviously. And it's 100% focus on work. But when they're home during certain times of the day, I shut down work. Because otherwise I can't give my full attention to them. And so that's my form of balance, but it's like a seesaw in my mind. You're never going to be completely flat. And maybe people are, but I haven't experienced that part yet. I said to someone, once I started the business and I was home, I'm working from home, and you would think that I'm not making cupcakes at 10 o'clock at night for an event the next day, but yet here I am. And, so some things just don't go away. And it's okay. You just try to do the best you can and juggle what you can at that moment. But there is no true turn off sometimes unless you purposefully say, nope, this is, my only attention right now.
And that makes sense, and I'm glad to hear you say that because so many people, and I've been guilty of this myself, we just
Mhm.
keep on going because, "Oh, I've gotta get this done." We get breathless. I've got, blah, 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 and we're just scaring ourselves to death, and then all of a sudden you realize that you haven't fed your husband if you have one,
Mhm.
or, the cats are standing at my feet going, "Hello? Yeah,
Yeah.
we're hungry." It's easy to get caught up if you're a business person. It's way too easy to get caught up and not really pay attention to the more important things that are going on in your life.
Yes, absolutely, and I agree with you. I mean, sometimes the schedules are going and you look at your calendar and you say, "I have this at 4 and this at 6," or whatever, and then, "Oh, wait, when is anyone gonna eat?"
Yeah,
We have to find time, like, that's an important part of living, so
it
need to
is,
put that in somewhere.
especially if you have cats, and mine are very vocal, and they can tell time. The
Oh, yeah.
Amstac can. So, I have one, and in fact, she passed away a year ago today, Gracie Lou, and her job she was 18 when she died, and her job, honest to goodness, the other cats would send her to sit on my desk and just look at me. It's like, "Oh, sorry, I'm coming."
Yeah.
I
She was the
miss that.
union
Yeah, she was. I
leader.
miss that little girl. Anyway, when did you realize that the traditional corporate path just no longer fit your life? And with 4 boys, I can imagine that that was kind of an ongoing question. So what finally pushed you to make the change?
So I had this seed planted in my head when I started working at 16. And it wasn't that I was thinking of building my family at the time and all of that. I was fortunate enough to work at a company that had job shares for women. I guess it could have been open to men too at the time. I shouldn't say it was just women, but there were only women that were doing it. And so it was a radio sales rep firm, and these women would each work 3 days a week. This is before cell phones and laptops. And they'd each come in 3 days a week, and then on the other 2 days, they were off. And they were very high-performing salespeople. They worked really well together, didn't really have any balls dropped or anything like that, and they had it made. And so I had experienced that at my aft I was it was my after-school job in high school, and so my idea was, "Oh, wow, this is the way the world can work." So it was always in the back of my mind, and it wasn't until I had left that place and went on to other, I would say more traditional digital companies that I realized, "Oh, this is not the norm. That's actually like the exception." And as I started to bring it up to my leadership when I had my first child, it was like, "No, no, no, no one's ever gonna do that. Like, that's not gonna happen." And I thought, "Wow, that's weird because now we have laptops and now we have cell phones. This should be so easy to do." And we were in the digital space, like, it's a no-brainer. But it was always met with a no. And um, I'm the type of person, it's like, you've seen it happen before, so you know it can happen again. And why can't I do it? And so I think the kind of breaking point for me was really, I was part of a company that got acquired, and they moved us downtown to the World Trade Center. My commute became about 2 hours each way. And
Oh,
I
no,
felt
no, no.
Yeah, and I had 3 kids at the time, and we would do this insane morning and afternoon rush. My husband and I would drive in together. We worked at different companies, and we would drop 1 kid off, the oldest, at before care for school, so he can go to before care, then get dropped off at school. Then we would so after dropping him off, we would drop my 2 middle ones, or the 2 end ones at that point, at a babysitter halfway point to the city. We would drive into the city, park. I would get out, walk several blocks, then hop on the subway to go downtown. And so by the time I got to work, I was exhausted because between all the stops and drop offs and, um, changing your shoes, I had my heels on and I'm running out of the car and all this stuff. And I'd get there, start working, and realize, like, okay, now I gotta leave early to go do this in reverse because childcare doesn't fit the mold of working mothers. because, childcare closes at 6 o'clock. And if I'm expected to still be at my desk at 6 o'clock, now I have after school and now I have a babysitter after. And I just started to realize like this is wearing me down. I'm barely spending time with my kids during the week. And then as I grew in leadership, I was expected to do things at home at night, which, I didn't mind if it was after the kids went to bed. But, I pushed back on management a little bit is like, I'm expected to create these PowerPoint decks, not on work time, but my time. You're already taking so much of my time and my commute and everything else. And so I said, you know what? If you're not gonna, they gave me some flexibility with work from home over the years, but like if you're not gonna really commit to making this work, then help me start my own company where I could build this for others because they had invested in other companies. And so why can't you invest in me and let me do the same? And so uh, the long of it is they ended up putting me as part of a layoff, um, which I had a little bit of severance, and then I was able to kind of get started, and they invested in me, and that's really, it wasn't necessarily like one day that broke it, but many years of asking for something in this seed that was planted that just continued to grow and foster in my mind of why can't this be the norm? And it's baffling to me how in this day and age, we cannot make this just easy for working, whether it be parents or caregivers or anything, just people that may need it or people that have anxiety and don't want to be in an office or whatever it is, but providing flexibility and trust to people, um, and, allowing for something that's just happier. Why does work have to not be happy?
Exactly. And we haven't talked about this before, but COVID, how did
Yeah.
that impact how you started working?
So for us, fortunately, it didn't affect us really at all because we started in 2016. So we were up and running. We were a fully remote company at the time. Now we have an office that is a hybrid setup, but a lot of our employees are still fully remote. So for us, yes, having kids home was really hard for everyone, but because we had the setup and the technology and all of that already built, our infrastructure, it was easy for us. And as easy as it could be for COVID, let me rephrase, I was still online learning all these children and trying to do that. But we were able to do it in a way where we tag teamed and like passed the baton of what needed to get done. And it just really, I would say, reinforced our structure that we had built already.
And that makes sense. And I knew that you were in place before COVID, but even so, that had to have changed. And as you just described, it did change how you did some of your work and how you worked with, I'm guessing, are they employees? Are they contractors?
So the majority of them are employees. We do have some contractors, but for the most part, almost everyone's an employee.
Gotcha. And, I was watching, it didn't impact me. COVID didn't impact me at all because I've always worked from home.
Mhm.
You don't want me in your office. I don't play well with others. I run with scissors, and if you want coffee, you can get it your own damn self. I'm not gonna do it. But I've always worked alone and, because I'm a highly committed introvert, this is how I have
Mhm.
to operate. I'm not shy. I don't have any filters, but I am an introvert. And I was watching people just melt down, and so many restaurants, of course, just died on the spot, and I
Yeah.
found that just very, very sad, but so many people were so panicked, and I have to tell you this I was watching people just freeze. They were like, deer in the headlight, they just froze, and they didn't have the common sense or the critical thinking skills, in my opinion, to get online and put a big old banner on their website, "We're still here. You can
Mhm.
contact us by phone, blah, blah," and they weren't, and I took it upon myself to get a little bit bossy. And I was contacting people I had never dealt with before, didn't know anything about them, saying, "Try this." And they're like, "Oh, oh." They just needed that kick in the butt,
Yeah.
which was interesting, but it's so easy to panic and then just go, "I can't breathe."
Mhm. And it's a scary time where you don't know what the future is, and if you
Right.
haven't experienced something before, we look back and we say, "Wow, we did all these things. Had we only known," or You know, when you're not there, it is scary, and you worry about the, death, and people are afraid to go out to, it's understandable, and everybody handles things in different ways. But yeah, I mean, for us, just like, and you said, you were already from home. So certain things in your life didn't change.
They did.
It's easier to handle the new and traumatic things that are coming in when you have stability in one area. So we were definitely lucky in that sense.
Sounds like it. And you used the word, and I've heard you say this because I listened to some work that you have out online. And you used the phrase pivoting ambition, and I love that.
Mhm.
What does that mean to you now compared to earlier times in your career?
So I think we tend to allow others to decide what success looks like instead of having our own opinion of what success looks like. And we feel judged and we allow that judgment into ourselves. So for me, you know, you believe your ambition, and what we're taught is you climb the corporate ladder and you're a VP and a senior VP and a CEO, and that means success. And we think that we have to do that to be successful. And being a mother is not, being a stay at home mom or something like that. That's not success. And we are driven to, have our ambitions towards this corporate ladder. And in reality, I had those things, but I didn't necessarily feel as successful as I do now, having what someone may from the outside feel like, well, that's not as successful as, so and so over here. But I find that I'm happier, I'm fulfilled in my own life, and I think when we, pivot what our expectations of what your ambition should be or what success looks like to what is right for yourself, that's where you start to find happiness. Like, we're always going to be miserable if we're comparing ourselves to everyone else. And, you know, I live in a neighborhood in a pretty decent school district, and there are a lot of kids that have things that are a lot better than mine. Extremely fancy cars some people have, and I say to my kids, you may be able to have one thing that those people have, but you're, chasing all of the things that someone has, you're never going to be happy. And you have to accept that your whole life you cannot compete with everyone else, and you have to just figure out what is right for you and what that means. And so sometimes we make those changes. Like, you have a child and you realize what's important for your career, and maybe what you thought yesterday was the right thing is not the right thing for tomorrow or for today. And it's okay to make that change. Like, I think we're so worried about being judged by others that it paralyzes us. And then you may stay in a job or a career and think, I just have to get to that next level, and then, and then I'll be happy. But you're giving up other things in the meantime. So, just pivoting what makes sense for you personally. And I think that has helped me just define, like, what, what my ambitions are and what are my life goals. And it may not look like what we've been taught.
I agree with you. And every once in a while, I try not to do that too often because I'm quite happy what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I'm a tech nerd. Seriously, I am. I'm a nerd at stilettos. Give me a computer, I'm all happy. That's all I
Yeah.
need, that and internet.
Mhm.
But every once in a while, I'll say, oh, geez, I need to catch up with these people. I need to be doing that. And that's when I sit down and I have a chat with myself and I will ask myself, what are you tolerating?
Mhm.
And I find out that I'm tolerating things that have nothing to do with how I operate.
Mhm.
So sometimes you need to just have a chat with yourself daily, actually. You have said that you don't have to choose between career success and family life, and I love that. So my question, Kim, is what boundaries became absolutely non-negotiable once you built your own company? You talk about time with the kids but what boundaries were just like, nope, I'm not doing that. Don't ask me.
Yeah, I think initially I was so burnt out from travel, um, and going to conferences and all this stuff. And so initially my boundaries were I wasn't going to be traveling. And there was a sad moment. years ago, a long time ago, my 19-year-old when he was young, and I had given him a stuffed animal, and he named it California because that's always where I was. And I was like, "That's it's harsh," kids really sometimes they don't mean it, but it's a harsh reality check sometimes, and so that was the main boundary for me initially, was that I can do this without having to travel all the time. I've lessened that, for sure, but not really. I still only travel a handful of times a year, not to the extent it was, and, um, you know, I see having my oldest in his second year of college, how short that time is, and I feel like if I wanna go and push my limits after they're out of the house, that's fine. That's gonna and maybe that's my new ambition then, but right now, my boundaries are not being not doing unnecessary travel so that I can be there at night. I can make sure I'm at their games because seeing my children's face light up when they see that I'm on the bleachers or see a sign of relief that I'm there, I want that for them. I don't want them to ever feel like my parent's not here because she chose to go to a meeting that did I really need to be at?
I was reading something about that yesterday, and you just, you put it beautifully. I mean, I couldn't repeat what I was reading.
Mhm,
It caught my attention, and here you are. There's no accidents, right? You
mhm.
intentionally built AlwaysOn Digital to support working parents, and I think this is so important. So what have you learned about leadership by designing a company this way?
So it's very interesting because it's not your typical business leadership toolkit. And I did start to lead this way at a couple of my last jobs. It was I had a sales team, and our boss was providing bonuses for someone that could close certain amount of money by the end of the quarter. And we offered out the bonuses, and some people did it and some people didn't. And then I asked one of the gentlemen, like, why why didn't that appeal to you? Like, don't you want $100? And he was like, I don't. I want to go home at 4:30. I don't want to take, because his train was very long too. And you say, I want to go home. I want to leave at 4:30. That's what I want. And I said, okay, so if we didn't offer you money the next time that we need this done, you would do it because you want to leave. And if I let you leave at 4:30, and he said yes. And so I went to my manager and I said, okay, let's do it this way next time. And we did. And he went and closed maybe like $100,000 at the end of the quarter extra because he was motivated by leaving at 4:30. And it was like we negotiated like 2 Fridays he could leave at 4:30, and he did. And I said, "You know what? We have to manage people to their life, to what works for them and what motivates them, because if we try to do all the same for everyone, it's not gonna work." And so I took those learnings and started to apply them more, in my career, and as I grew and started to manage people more. And that is really the entire foundation of what we have here, um, which is, everybody has different needs and it's not all the same. We try to, work with everyone, but also there's an extreme amount of empathy that we have to have for each other. And so, whether we're all in the same boat, we're all here together working towards the same goal, we have to, manage people in the way that they understand and are committed to the company, but then know that we're also committed to them as people and their family and their life. And that really helps, because one, and having trust, like trust is critical in all of this. You can't do anything without trust because people are remote and they're, taking time for their family or what they need, but then we're trusting that they're going to still get the work done. And, it all kind of works together. But I would say those early experiences of seeing how people are and how they react to things and treating them in the way that works best for them has helped and kept them committed.
Absolutely. And going back a bit to COVID, and I don't know why this is bugging me, but it has been for a couple of weeks.
Mhm.
I remember because I was watching it, I was fascinated by how people were treating their employees that they could no longer talk to around the water cooler or
Mhm.
stand behind their chair and, rattle the change in their pockets to make sure that
Mhm. Yeah.
they're doing so. No trust. I mean, it
Yeah.
seemed to me that trust was a fleeting commodity during COVID for people, in the C-suite or
Mhm.
people in management who just said, "I don't trust these," and they made it clear they didn't trust them.
Mhm.
And they had massive walkouts, like, "We're not gonna stick around, dude." But what I noticed too, and I'm sure you're still seeing this in your business, that people have different times when they're creative, when they're working hard. I don't know about you, I'm up in the morning, the devil says, "Oh, crap, she's awake," and I get a lot done.
Yeah.
Then around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I just go, "Oh, geez, I'm done because 'cause I'm looking at the same piece of code over and
Mhm.
over again. I'm done, and I will literally walk away. I don't know, make a gumbo. I may walk the dog. I may do any number of things, but about 7 o'clock at night, I'm back, and I'm back hard.
Mhm.
So, are you finding that people are going to work with their own timing, and as long as they're getting it done, you're good with it?
That's exactly what it is. And I that's we have to respect the way people work too. We're taught a certain structure and way. It's 9 to 5, and that's what you have to do, and all this. But then with technology, why is it okay to accept, you want somebody 9 to 5 in the office or 9 to 6 in the office? But then you also want them to respond to your emails at night, and you also want them to work on projects at night, and so you're
See,
it just
that's theft as far as I'm concerned.
yeah.
That really is, that's corporate theft. You pay them to be in the office, good. When they leave, you're done.
Yes, they're not yours. And
Right,
I've always said, I said to my boss at one point when they were making me do PowerPoints at night on my time, I said, "This just makes my per hour less because,
right.
I'm gonna be under minimum wage soon if you keep making me do work on my time and have to be in the office and, when is my free time? This is all yours and you're paying me, you gotta pay me more for this." Um, and I agree. So you can't have it all. And so, but being able to say to someone, listen, the most important time in your day, maybe, you need to make sure you're picking up your kid from school and helping them with their homework. And maybe that's a 2-hour break to your point, the 2 o'clock window, and then later on they come on. But let's not forget, we have people that respond to emails at 10 o'clock at night or send client emails or do it 7 a.m. in the morning. It's getting done. So let's not track the 9 to 5 of it. As long as it's working for everyone and you're able to meet client needs and everything else, obviously there's a bigger picture. But why why do we have to try to fit people into a square box and say that's the only way to do it, and then go and take advantage of them after and steal their personal time? So you can't have both.
And, yeah, that leads me back to what we've been talking about. You're talking about trust, and
Mhm.
honestly, I've got my web development company, I use contractors. Some of them have been with me for 10, 15 years. I've never met them, I never will, but they work when they need to, and it always gets done because they know I trust them to get it done, and I'm not going to be standing over my keyboard going, "Is it done? Is it done?"
Yeah.
They will leave. Lis Early on when I started my company, I was bad. I was a bad owner. I was a bad employer, if you wanna call me that. They're not employees, they're contractors.
Mhm.
But I was giving them bullet points, "Do this, do this, do this, do this," and I was not asking for input. And I always hire people that are better at something than I am. I can do it, but they're better because this is their main focus. But I was telling them to do it my way, and I could sense after a while that they hated me. They really hated
Mhm.
me. I didn't blame them, none. And I just, jumped on a call and I said, "Listen, I realize what I'm doing and I'm really sorry. You guys are experts. I want you to guide me when you think it's necessary." They're still with me, thank God.
Yeah.
But I had to pull my ego straight out of the stratosphere and have a chat.
Mhm. Yeah. No, absolutely. And you evolved, and which is
I was
wonderful.
scared. I
Yeah.
was terrified. I can't lose these people, they hate me. It was
Yeah.
awful.
And I'm sure and they love you now. So it's you're able to change, and sometimes we need to figure out how we can work with someone and how we can live with someone and all of that. And there's a little bit of that. But um yeah, I mean, if you're not trusting people and giving them the ability, and I agree with you. I always want to hire people that know more than I do because that's how I learn too. We always want to learn from others and continue to grow and evolve. Otherwise, we don't get anywhere.
We really don't. I wanted to ask you, and I know you work with a lot of people, people in your team, people that you're, hiring you to work with them. What do executives considering a similar move like you did often underestimate about leaving corporate life? Are they terrified? Have they, sat down and worked with, I don't know, you? What do they need to know?
So I've actually spoken to a lot of people that or were trying to leave corporate or maybe went through a layoff or looking for a life change and they were thinking of starting something. And I've given them, the advice that I either was, had a little bit of advice from a mentor, but I didn't go to business school. So I really didn't know what I was doing, to be honest, when I started this, which ignorance could be bliss, I guess. And that worked. I didn't know that a lot of companies fail before 5 years until I was almost at my fifth year. So that was great to find out later and not have that hanging over my head. But I
Do
would
a
say,
countdown. Yeah,
yeah,
too
exactly.
many
Oh
people
no.
like, oh, I'm counting down four
Oh,
and a half years. Oh God.
yeah, exactly. Is that going to happen? But I think the main thing is like you don't always need as much as you think you do. In the sense of I was a sales leader, and we had millions and millions of dollars in our goal. And when I started the business, I was like, I actually don't need to sell as much as I did in the past to make this work. It's not, because I'm not giving 90% of it to my company, the company I worked for. Like you get to keep the whole thing. Everything you're doing is for yourself. So you don't need as much as you did before, and you can make life changes and things like that. Like, you don't always need as much. And the other thing that I felt was a big piece, and I still stand by it, is the accounting piece. Really, I mean, now we have so much AI, but anything you could do to, research and really make sure that the accounting is correct as you go and launch your own business is critical. So much so that my oldest is now studying finance and accounting because I just started to ingrain it, over the past 10 years. Like, you really need to make sure you always know accounting for your life. Like, it's one of the most important things that I've realized in this that I was lacking. And, maybe people have stronger accounting backgrounds than I do that are going to make a move like this. But that to me, really knowing your numbers and how it works and how you're going to sell things and how you're going to make money before you launch. But there's never, I don't think, a perfect time. I mean, maybe some people feel like, oh, this is the perfect time. I've got a nice little nest egg ready, but it's always going to be scary. It's always going to be a decision that you'll have to make at one point that you're not sure. Do you think you should just go back and get a job? It's not like I haven't thought about that over the past 10 years. I joke with someone on my team. We joke all the time, like, should we just get a job at Starbucks and, scrap it all at this point? But just, because some days are hard. It's not always going to be easy. And it's also really important to stay motivated. It's easy to get started and feel good, and you maybe get a big win, and then you think, all right, I'm gonna go to lunch, or I'm gonna go shopping for the day, or take off, or do this. Like, sometimes it's hard to get up and focus on it, like it's like you're working for someone else. And I think you have to have your why somewhere. And for me is I am scared to have to go back into the city and do a 2-hour each way commute. I don't want that ever again. And so that fear has kept me motivated to go and get through things. But sometimes you need something, a why or whatever that is gonna keep you motivated. And mentors help. Maybe not a mentor of a multi-million dollar company if you're just starting out, maybe somebody who's 2 years ahead of you that has gone through things, and maybe you're a product company and, they've gone through manufacturing and could give you advice or packaging. But somebody who's been in the weeds enough close to where you are, maybe where you want to be, um, in the next couple of years or so. I found that very helpful as well.
There's no perfect time. And, I'm a podcaster on top of being a web developer. And honestly, this is the time to have a podcast. Get your voice heard,
Mhm.
amplify your voice. It's marketing 101 as far as I'm concerned. And people say, oh, I'm just not ready. Sure you are.
Mm,
Just go do it. Take
yeah.
action. But I've had this conversation with myself so many times that it's like, there's no well, and I'll just go ahead and say it.
Mhm.
Entrepreneurs, those of us who are entrepreneurial minded, and I am because I really
Mhm.
can't work with other people, we have to have a cast iron stomach. We're going to fail every stinking day. Multiple times, a big fail. Sometimes you just bumped your shoulder on the mantle and went, owie, and kept on going. Or sometimes you fall flat on your hiney. But you have to have that cast iron stomach and say, well, I'm going to go walk the dog and think about this. What can I do different?
Yeah, absolutely. And your point about going and taking a walk, and coming back and looking at something later is so important as well. And I agree with you there because sometimes you stare at something for so long or you can't figure it out and you just have to step away from it and do that. And it doesn't have to be a grind. Like I think, you think entrepreneur and you think somebody who's like grinding so hard and it's hustle and nothing enjoyable about it. The whole idea is if you're stepping away from a corporate environment to build something on your own, it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't have to be hard because it is. And to your point, you do need a cast iron stomach, but um, it still feels lighter to me. And maybe just because I'm happier, that's why it feels lighter, but it isn't for the faint of heart for sure.
It really isn't. You have to be somewhat pig-headed. Well, a lot
Yeah.
pig-headed. A
Yeah.
lot. So, but let's talk about your team member because you have mentioned, and I mentioned it at the top of the show, that your team members are highly skilled mothers and they're seeking
Mhm.
meaningful careers with non-traditional schedules. Let's talk about that because I think a lot of people are going, huh, how can I do that? How can I reach her? Will she hire me? Let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of the women from my team I have worked with in the past. We've, overlapped on in some way. And what happened was, at the same time as I was struggling and thinking something's not right here and there has to be a better way to do this, I noticed that some of our best talent were leaving once they had kids and they were just leaving the workforce. And I was like, well, if they wanna be home and that's what they wanna do and that's their passion and that's what success means for them, and their happiness and all this, that's great, but if they do wanna work and it's just that they can't work because there's no environment for them, then that's sad, and that should change, and so I started to really see that, and I was very frustrated with it because it's like the best people you have working for you are leaving because you don't give them flexibility. And they are looking for maybe, a time difference than everyone else. They'll come in at 7, they want to leave at 3 or whatever it is. But, so I kind of saw that and then reached out to them pretty much immediately when we were thinking about building this. And it was, the the idea was we're gonna have experts, people that are highly skilled and are able to balance, their career and their family. We have lots of sick days here. There's lots of kids that are sick with, there's, a lot of us that have a lot of kids. And so, all of that happens. These are all the things that you experience, as a working parent. It still happens here, but our structure is to kind of have like a relay race or a tag team. So, people come in and like I said, they're all, have over 10 years experience running either ad campaigns or strategy or things like that. And it's, hey, listen, so and so is sick today. I need help, or I have to run to the doctor, or I have this. Can anyone pick it up? And it's done in a way that we for our clients, it's set up more of like a team structure so that they never know that someone is not there. they don't know. From their perspective, somebody's always responding. Everyone's kind of on the chain, and so it allows for that to happen. But yes, these are majority of them are mothers, highly skilled, and have been in the workforce, and are able to have this fulfillment of having the career and what they've built for themselves and were so good at for so many years, but also being present when they need to be at home. And there's a woman that just started a business last year who I'm close with and we partner with here and there. And she started her own business. She was telling me this horror story. She worked at an agency of how she had to do a client pitch, and her daughter had pneumonia. And they were like, "Can someone else watch her so you can come in and do this client pitch?" And she said, "Well,
No, no,
yeah." And
no.
her mother went and watched her daughter, and she said she went and said, "I will do the pitch, and I'm walking out after." And she said her boss was like, "Where are you going after the pitch?" And she's like, "I was very clear that my daughter has pneumonia and I'm going home." And they said, "Well, isn't your mother home with her now?" Like, no, I want to be there with my child. And, this just happens so often. And it's a
See, that
shame.
shouldn't even be a question.
No. And we push out sometimes the best people because, why did she need to sit in the office? The pitch was over. You had her do the thing that needed to be done. What? So she could sit at her desk and answer emails, which she couldn't do that at home. Why? Because you don't trust that she's working. If she took 5 minutes to check her daughter's temperature or feed her, like how many people take smoking breaks or, walk or like to your point, stand at the water cooler or anything else. Just because you're in the office doesn't mean you're working more.
No,
Uh,
in fact, you're probably trying not to work.
yes, exactly. You're socializing, which is, fun and great. And I socialize a lot in our office too. It's okay, but it doesn't mean because you're home, you're not working. The idea that we're all sitting home doing laundry instead of working is not true. I can tell you firsthand. Um,
Doing all of that. We're
yes.
building things. We're doing laundry. We're cursing at the walls. We're doing a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. We're busy,
Yeah.
busy, busy. But you know what I wanted to ask you because you're talking about moms, and
Mhm.
I keep writing this word down, so apparently it's important to me, but seniors, what about people who, because you're talking about experience, and what about people who have aged out of office work or want to age out of it, but they still have massive skills? It is a idiocy to think that senior people don't know how to operate tech. A lot of them do, and they're very, very, very good at it.
Yeah. So we actually have people of all ages that work for us. The someone who's on the older side is actually he's a man. We don't, it's not just women or mothers that work with us. We just happen to have a lot of them. But yeah, they bring a different perspective. To your point, just because somebody doesn't, you think they don't know technology because of their age, but there's so much experience that someone can bring to the table, and to think that you can't learn something from someone else is just idiotic to me. We can learn
I
something
love
from,
that word. You're right,
yeah,
idiotic it is.
it's just, you can learn something from anyone, anytime, any place, no matter who they are. And, you should never belittle somebody or think you're better than them because of the career that they have or where they live or their clothing or whatever. So, um, we embrace that here for sure. It's more about personality, the ability to work with other people as a team, and understand because of the structure of like having each other's back is critical here because we know that things are going to happen when people are trying to, like just schedules and things like that. Like, I can't do this at this time. Can someone else help? And so making sure that everyone's not in it for themselves. Like, we don't want anybody here that's just in it for themselves because they're not representative of what we're trying to do. Um,
Right.
it doesn't really matter what age you are. I would say, sometimes the biggest struggle is really younger, less experienced people because I don't want to do a disservice to someone that may need more training or leadership. Like, we're cognizant of that. We don't want to bring somebody on and then them, flail because they're not getting the experience of being, in an office or something like that. So, we do think about that and making sure that if we are bringing somebody on that needs more training, that we are committed to giving them that training. Um, because and that's a time thing. It's something we have to really consider sometimes to bring on people that have less experience. And that's the thing that makes me a little bit of sad. The way corporate works now, and the mandate to return to office, and the way things are done, is because I do see a value of having people together, um, to learn, because I did learn from hearing others and being around, but it's all in the approach and understanding the reason why you're doing something. And if you're doing something for someone's benefit and it's clear to them and they understand, they buy into it, it's easier to say, hey, let's have we need a hybrid environment. Or maybe it's not necessarily in person, but it's, are you doing enough training or online interaction, or do they feel comfortable that they can ask questions so that can help them learn? And so it's all about, the environment we set up, but communication from, both ways.
And that makes perfect sense to me. And I agree with you, working with younger people. Look, I remember when I was, you know, 18, 19 to 25, I was so
Mhm.
arrogant.
Yeah.
And I just outgrew it about an hour ago. So it's just, but it is difficult for younger people because they just know it all. In some ways we're sociopaths until we get past that point.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
it is difficult. They know it all. They're just not going to listen. But I genuinely believe that what you're doing, while you're working with people of all ages, and they can communicate and, work together, that's helpful. Listen, I think I said this at the top of the show. If I didn't, I meant to, but I work with people like you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And
Mhm.
honestly, you become my mentors in so many ways. So many ways. I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm watching what you're doing, I'm following along, and all of a sudden I'll go, ooh, and I'll write it down. That's something I needed to know. So if people would just shut up and listen, I think is what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah.
You can learn so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And the the podcast space is so amazing because you have access to so many wonderful people that can be mentors to you, even if it's a short-term mentor. And I had listened to a podcast sometime last year, and the woman said, every quarter, try to take something off your calendar. Like, make it, give it to someone else. It has to be someone else's. Someone else has to own that now. And, as you're trying to grow as a leader and expand, you have to take things off your plate. And so it was very purposeful, the way, saying it in that way, like, take it off your calendar. I'm like, wow, like, that's something I hadn't thought about in that way. I always say, oh, I have to make sure somebody else, if I have to give this to somebody else so I can take on something else. But that visual for me was, like, mind blowing. I was like, "Oh, everyone should do this." Like, this is an easy way to visualize it. So, I agree. We can learn so much from, listening to others, and mentors. They may not even know they're a mentor of yours.
They
You
don't,
know?
unless I, send them a note and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
guess what I just took away from something you said or did?" And we need to do more of that. We need to let people know that they're heard, that they've been read, that their books are read, that they're important.
Mhm.
What they said landed. And I think if we were to get better with that, we would all be just better people.
Yeah, I agree, because sometimes we don't think other people have self-doubt,
Oh,
because
please,
we
imposter
assume.
syndrome. I wake
Yeah.
up.
Oh, it's my favorite saying, the imposter syndrome. I feel like, it took so long to realize that, to think that maybe somebody else would be feeling that, but they look so put together and they're so polished and they're successful, like, oh, they don't feel this.
Oh,
And,
yes, we do.
yeah. And we all go through it, and it's okay. Um, it's, you try to get past it, and like you said, you have a conversation with yourself, like, why are you doing this? Like, this is what's important, this is what you've done, and be confident. We had a company that was helping us with our business cards and some of our marketing, and they wanted to put digital marketing expert on my business card. And I said, there's no way I'm putting that on my business card. People are going to judge me. And she said to me, you've been doing this for over 25 years. That makes you an expert at something. And I was like, I'm still not going to put it on. And she said, a man would put it on his card and he wouldn't think twice about it. So you have to get over it. We're putting it on your card and you're going to start saying it. And it's hard because I don't want to sound egotistical or anything, but it's also okay to say, yes, I have that experience. Just like if you went to med school and you became a doctor, you're not being a show off by saying you're a doctor. You did it, you accomplished it, you have earned the right to say
And
it.
what kind of doctor?
Yeah.
I've had the same conversation recently because, like I said, I've been doing this thing for 18 years.
Yeah.
And one of my friends said, Denise, why are you not marketing yourself as a podcast expert? And I went,
Mhm.
uh, I don't
Yeah.
know. I
You're
had
an
to
expert.
stop and I am. I've got a lot of experience doing what I'm doing. So, now I'm creating all kinds of stuff this year and I'm really excited about it. But I had to get out of my own way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And no one would even judge you or think twice if you called yourself an expert.
I
They would
hope
say,
not, but
yes,
if
she
they
is.
do, maybe they're not my audience.
Yeah. Well, then they're the wrong. Yes. That's on them. That's
Right,
the problem.
right. We're talking, and we are going to run out of time, but we're talking about marketing and digital marketing. What I lost my train of thought. For small businesses like mine trying to grow quickly, where do you see the most wasted time or money in digital marketing? And I'm going to go straight to virtual assistants. I was an expert many, many years ago until everybody in the Philippines got a keyboard and kind
Yeah.
of ruined the industry. Nothing against them, but oh my. But all of a sudden, I started watching and listening and saying, everybody says, get a VA, get an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go back to what you said earlier. If you don't train them, you are
Mm-hmm.
wasting their time and yours. They're not mind readers. You have to
Yeah.
work with them. What do you think?
No, I agree. And I'm in the same boat where I'm always saying I need somebody to help me. We need an assistant, a virtual assistant, or however we end up doing it. But we have to dedicate the time to making it work. Otherwise, it's a waste of time for everybody. And
And you
so it
have
is
to have
critical.
standard operating procedures. I mean, you just have to. And if you're
Yeah.
not going to take the time to have those in place, don't hire. Do it
Don't
yourself until
exactly.
you can hire.
Exactly. Until you can hire and put the time in it or have a template or have anything that someone is not waiting on you to answer, questions constantly. And they have to be able to do their job on their own, as if they went to work anywhere else. So it's really important to have that, set up and from that standpoint. And I think from small businesses, sometimes you try to do everything and you don't outsource things that you should because you think maybe the money is not there to do it. And you don't recognize that my time or your time could be better spent bringing in something that generates revenue versus working on this task. And
Right.
it's like a bell curve, at one point it is going to get better. Sometimes it's harder in the beginning, but just, getting to that point of saying, okay, I'm going to invest some time into this and then I know it's going to get better after. And it'll improve and so forth after. But it's just, we kind of go to the shiny object and I have to do this now and, oh, I gotta be on TikTok and I gotta do this. But it's really just what you have to really recognize where do you belong and what makes sense for you, and then making sure your resources are set up properly.
Exactly. I started asking myself some years ago, let's say I bill out, for somebody that has questions about WordPress. I may bill 150 to $350 an hour for whatever kind of work I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to say, Denise, is this your normal rate, 150 to 350 when you could pay somebody $15 to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Stop doing that. That kind of goes back to take something off, your every quarter take something off. And that's about the time of year I say, okay, what am I doing that I shouldn't be touching? It's, duplicatable, it's replicatable. Don't touch it. And unless
Mm-hmm.
they're going to pay you $350 an hour to do it, are you insane? So I
Yeah.
have the same conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, sometimes you don't realize that you can generate more by stopping something and stopping to do something. So it is, it's hard. And I definitely have that conversation with myself all the time because sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm going to write content for myself, today on LinkedIn or whatever. I'm like, should I be doing something else? you know?
5 o'clock in the morning, it's in my
Yeah.
calendar. That's when I
Yeah.
write.
That's when you do it, right?
Yep. Because if it's in my calendar, I'm going to do it. If it's not in my calendar, I'm going to go, I'm going to go listen to music. So, I don't know. I'm going to wander off. Kim, we are out of time and I hate this, but I would love for you to come back again, maybe
I
later in
would
the year when you have something else to share with us.
I would love that. It was great, to have a conversation with you, Denise. This is wonderful. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Well, listen, as you look ahead, what does the next version of ambition look for you personally or professionally? And I have another question. If you could leave our listeners with one mindset shift about ambition, can't talk,
Mhm.
and balance, what would it be?
So I would say, ambition really, it's what you want for yourself. It has to be, your happiness. And it's really the same for balance. Balance is not what everyone else's balance is. It's what works for you. What makes you feel calm and that centered feeling you get, because if you don't feel it, it's just what your inner peace is. And I think that's, focus on that over the logistics of it.
And a mindset shift. What would that be? For
um
me, it was, what are you tolerating? That was a big one for me.
and I think sometimes as the new year comes, we use that moment to do a reflection. And sometimes it's, I'm going to say no more. I'm going to rethink am I just trying to say yes to everything? And just say no to certain things and make sure that what you're saying yes to is really what's right for you, not what you think you're expected to say yes to.
Got it. Where can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Kym Insana. So it's KYMINSANA. You can find us on our website.
Sorry.
You can find us on our website, which is getalwayson.com.
Got it. Well, listen, everybody, today's conversation with Kym and Santa was a reminder that ambition doesn't disappear when life changes, it evolves. And we talked about what it really looks like to step away from a traditional career, redefine success on your own terms, and build a business that supports both performance and real life. That's so important, real life. And Kim shared how intentional design, clear boundaries, and values driven leadership can create space for growth without burnout, especially for working parents who want meaningful work without sacrificing their families. So if you would like to learn more about her work or connect with her, you can find her at getalways.com. Is that right, Kim?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And connect with her on LinkedIn and Facebook. Thank you for joining us. I am Denise Griffitts, and I will see you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Kim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.